CMMCS was back at Brands Hatch on the 26th of June. After 2 away meetings, we saw the return of Brands Hatch for the Super Saloons and TinTops. A bumper entry meant we were into reserves, but unfortunately Jack Whitehead would have to withdraw due to illness. We all wish him a speedy recovery. Race day saw several newcomers in amongst the regular TinTop entries, plus a welcome return to a number of regular contenders from the past, most notably Dominic Ryan and Peter Osborne. Qualifying was extended to 20 minutes as to alleviate the traffic congestion on this small track where most cars would lap easily under a minute. In the end, it would be the Bradleys who would lock out the front row, Adrian and Ronan, in their Class B BMWs. Class A runners Alex Sidwell in his Commodore and Nick Sutton would occupy row number 2. In 5th would be Peter Selden in his BMW, first in Class D, followed by another Class D runner, Sean Fairweather, who would unfortunately have to leave after qualifying after issues with the car. Next would be Mark Cripps, followed by T2 and leading TinTop Matt Rowling in his Honda Civic. He would be followed by Peter Osborne and Martin Reynolds, who was fastest within Class C. Martin Scott would be just outside the top 10, just ahead of Rob Birley. Warren Johnson would be the next TinTop in 13th, followed by Dave Hutchins, Vic Hope and Gideon September, who was fastest in Class T1. Ken Angell was up next, just ahead of Graham Richardson, Liam Pauling, Adrian Matthews, Colin Claxton, Kenny Hunt, Andrew Stenning, putting in a fantastic performance to be fastest within Class TP, ahead of myself, Dominic Ryan, Callum Perfect, Steve Dan, Justin Ross, Alex Martin, Caitlin Mape, followed by John Wild, Ian Seal, James Seal, Samuel Hayward and Jeremy Sutton at the back after a couple of gremlins in qualifying. We'll see him out on the grid, however, for an exciting race where he'll be sure to battle through the field. Race 1 saw a very steady green flag lap, and the safety car was going very steady, allowing all of the 33 cars to stay in close proximity as they rounded clearways to start the race. It will be Adrian Bradley leading ahead of Ronan, with Sidwell just in 3rd, followed by Selden. Nick Sutton had slipped back in the early stages to 6th place behind Cripps, and then came Reynolds and Rowling, Osborne and Birley. Already there were a number of fantastic battles developing through the field. This was thanks to a great mix of cars which allowed everyone to have someone to battle with in this tight and twisty track. We had notable progress from Jeremy Sutton, who was making steady progress through the field from the back of the grid in his Sierra Cosworth, whilst Birley was having a great scrap with Osborne until we found a way past on lap number 5. Rod wasn't in his usual escort, he was helping out a friend in his whilst Rod's car was getting repaired after a couple of rounds where he had issues at the start of the season. He was blasting his way through the field, however, after qualifying. He was then after Rowling and then Reynolds. Behind them there was an unfortunate incident between Hope and September, the two coming together on the Brabham Straight, the Hondas both having to retire there and then. Nick Sutton was setting some impressive pace in the middle of the race. He set his fastest lap on lap number 5, however, as he overtook Cripps and Selden. He then homed in on Sidwell, trying to gain 3rd spot. He eventually did so on lap number 8. Ronan Bradley would be his next target, who he caught and passed on lap number 13. Unfortunately, soon after there would be an incident that would prematurely end the race. Birley had got past Reynolds on lap number 14, but when exiting clearways, his differential in the Ford Escort had broke rather violently, and this spewed oil all over the track, with several drivers getting sideways down the main straight at Brands Hatch. Unfortunately, a few drivers were caught out by this and ended up in the wall or gravel. Ronan Bradley and Graham Richardson were 2 of these. Thankfully, the clerk made the right decision to end the race a little early to make sure nothing else happened. Rod apologised for putting oil down the track, which unfortunately saw a few cars getting a bit of damage, and this incident had led to the race being finished a little bit early, only 13 minutes on the board in the final classification. It would be Adrian Bradley winning in his Class B BMW ahead of Nick Sutton, putting in a fantastic comeback drive to finish only 2 seconds behind. 3rd on the road would be Alex Sidwell in his Commodore, followed by Class D leader Peter Selden in his M3. Next up would be Mark Cripps ahead of Class C leader Martin Reynolds. Leading TinTop, an impressive return for Matt Rowling in his Honda Civic Type R. He was ahead of Peter Osborne, Dave Hutchins, who was the next TinTop, followed by Warren Johnson, the third place TinTop, all of these within Class T2. Next up will be Martin Scott just outside the top 10, Jeremy Sutton from the back of the grid up to 12th, and leading T1 runner Ken Angell in 13th. Colin Claxton was next up ahead of the leading T3 runner Liam Pauling, a fantastic performance in his Citroen Saxo. Next up would be Adrian Matthews, followed by myself, Caitlin May putting in some impressive lap times to come up to 18th position, followed by Dominic Ryan, Callum Perfect and Alex Martin, with a fantastic battle between the three of them early on. Justin Ross would be next up ahead of John Wilde, and Ian Seal beat son James Seal, the two having their first competitive battles out on track, which we look forward to seeing more of in race number 2. The final finisher was Samuel Hayward in 26th place, taking 6th in Class T2. The unfortunate non-classified runners were Ronan Bradley, Rod Birley, Graham Richardson, Andrew Stenning, who unfortunately had a drive shaft issue right at the end of the race. Vic Hope, Gideon September, Kenny Hunt and Steve Dan were the other non-classified runners. The fastest lap of the race went to Nick Sutton on lap number 5, a 51.353. Race 2 was without September, Hope, Birley and Ronan Bradley, and also Kenny Hunt too. Steve Dan had made a miraculous change between the two races. After only about 90 minutes between the sessions, he had swapped his VW Polo for his Sirocco and joined at the back of the grid. It was another very slow rolling lap, which saw Sidwell blast into the lead early on from Adrian Bradley and Nick Sutton. The white Mitsubishi would unfortunately only last a couple of laps, as a fuel leak issue caused him to slow early on and pull off. Hopefully we'll see Nick back soon racing with the club. He put in a great performance in race number 1 to win his class for the first time and also take the fastest lap outright. Sidwell will continue to lead the race, but only just, as the BMW would harry him through the corners, only losing a bit in the straight lines. Cripps was now promoted up into 3rd position once Selden had shaken off the attention of Reynolds. He would then set his sights on Cripps to have a good battle between the two BMWs. We had a fantastic battle for the lead of the race, but also for 3rd position overall as well. It was all going on around a very busy Brands Hatch circuit. Reynolds was starting to slip back towards Rowling, but always looked like he had enough in hand. Jeremy Sutton continued his forward march as he moved up into 7th position. Osborne chased hard in his Vauxhall to take 8th, who was pursued by Hutchins, who was without Johnson as the Peugeot 205 had pulled out early on. Steve Dan's Sirocco was no better behaved than his Polo, and he had to retire early on, which had concluded a number of really unfortunate events for Steve, seeing quite a few DNFs through 2022 so far. And at the front, it was a fantastic battle over the last few laps as we got the full 15 minutes in to take the battle for the win to the line. Alex Sidwell would just take the victory from Adrian Bradley in the end by 1.2 seconds. In 3rd position would be Mark Cripps. Peter Selden would put in another performance in his Class D BMW to see him 4th place on the road and win his class. Martin Reynolds would be the fastest within Class C, and Matt Rowling once again the fastest TinTop, finishing 6th on the road in his Honda Civic Type R T2. Jeremy Sutton, another impressive performance, would see him finish 7th, 3rd within Class B. Then will come Peter Osborne, Dave Hutchins and Colin Claxton to round out your top 10. Next up would be Graham Richardson. Somewhat of a comeback after the first race, he won his Class T1 in 11th overall. Next would be Adrian Matthews in the Volvo C30, followed by Ken Angell in the BMW E36. Once more it will be Liam Pauling winning Class T3 in the Citroen Saxo, a fantastic weekend for him, securing pole and fastest lap and also both wins in both races. Caitlin May continued her forward progression, finishing 15th on the road, setting her best lap on lap number 16, a 56.805. Next up was Dominic Ryan in his Class T3 Fiesta, not that far behind Pauling on the road, so a closer battle within class there. I would narrowly edge out Andrew Stenning to get the Class TP win this time, with Callum Perfect sandwiched in the middle. Alex Martin, another great performance from him. He had a good battle with Justin Ross throughout that one. They finished 3rd and 4th within their classes respectively. This time James would beat Ian in the seal battle. Be interesting to see how that continues for the rest of this season. Next up would be John Wilde, followed by Samuel Hayward once more, this time finishing 5th place within Class T2. Only 3 retirements this time, Warren Johnson completing 10 laps, Steve Dan completed just 7, and Nick Sutton unfortunately only completed 2. Your fastest lap of the race this time was Adrian Bradley. He didn't quite get the win this time, but he got the fastest lap of 51.789. Let's catch up with some of the drivers after a very busy day at Brands Hatch. We started late in qualifying and we finished early thanks to the other series that were with us on the day needing the last slot of the day. So everyone today, impressive job to get that amount of cars to the finish. So let's hear from 3 of our most successful drivers of the day here at Brands Hatch.
Yeah, good. Ecstatic. I think the adrenaline's just starting to wear off. Race 1 was interesting with a few incidents, bit of oil, bit of coolant, pretty much on every corner. But yeah, it was clean, hard racing. It was good fun. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, good. First race, not so good. Struggled a bit on the tyres we had. We changed the tyres and it seemed to make a big difference. And the back markers were better behaved in the second race, which did make a big difference. Yeah, good, all good.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, it's a really lovely club to race with. Yeah, it's been a really good day. Yeah, results are a little bit of a bonus, to be honest. So yeah, it's been a good weekend. First couple of laps are always good fun, really nice and close, and then I managed to break free from the pack and yeah, just try and concentrate and put some fast laps in.
Well, we'll be here for the GP. We won't do Lytton. This car's not really suitable for Lytton, so it'll definitely be the GP circuit we come to next.
So that's it for the weekend action at Brands Hatch on the June 26th weekend. Massive thank you to all of the competitors, teams, family, everyone at the CMMCS to allow this meeting to go ahead. Thank you to the competitors because despite the obvious speed differences, everyone drove respectively and produced some really exciting racing out on track. Unfortunately, the oil on track issues in race 1 did cause a little bit of action on the main straight, which we didn't want, but thankfully all drivers are okay, and of course the cars will be able to be repaired before the next one. We look forward to some additional sponsorship in the TinTops going forward, which is quite exciting for the club. And the next stop for the TinTops and Supers will be Lytton Hill on Saturday, July 23rd, under a month's time, where all 3 series will have their own races. So Intermarques, Super Saloons and TinTops all getting separate races, as the track is the smallest that we race on. Thanks to everyone that took part in the event, we very much appreciate that, and we look forward to seeing you at the next event at Lytton Hill at the end of July. Thank you and goodbye.